technologies acceptance and digital competence in higher education. And this will integrate Islamic education perspective. So my name is Musa Said Abubakari, and I'm a PhD candidate at Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah Institute of Education in University Brunei Darussalam. So today's agenda in this presentation, we are going to look the introduction section, the literature review methodology, and after that, we are going to look at the results of my findings and the discussion of the findings, and finally the conclusions and the recommendations. So beginning with the introduction, in today's digital world, digital technologies adoption and digital competence are very crucial. And effectively using these tools enhances teaching and learning experiences based on the evidence from the literature. So digital technology and digital competence are essential for academic success, lifelong learning, and career readiness, among others, because digital competence is highly demanded in the modern workforce. So in Brunei specifically, digital technology access and usage of these tools are very prevalent. And this is supported by various government initiatives. And the digital tools such as learning management systems and laptops, they do prevail in Brunei higher education institutions. And during the COVID-19, digital technologies, the usage of digital technologies was highlighted, and this caused a spike in using these tools because all higher education institutions integrated fully online learning. In the literature, and the common conception among individuals is that students, whether in Brunei or other countries, are assumed to be digital natives. And there is a high percentage where students or most people actively use digital technologies. However, there is a discrepancy between this digital nativeness, so-called digital nativeness, and its reflection in educational outcomes. So the problems comes based on the literature review I've done comprehensively. There is an underutilization of digital technologies, especially in Islamic higher education institutions. Students do not take advantage of digital tools for learning opportunities, and there is a challenge for preparing students to interact with digital resources responsibly. And there is a myth or misconception of digital nativeness of the current generation. And so there is a digital competence gap. This digital competence gap is among the digital inequalities along with access and the usage of digital technologies. So based on the literature review, which I've done it comprehensively, there are gaps in evaluating digital technology acceptance, especially in Islamic higher education institutions, and the digital competence in Brunei Darussalam. That led to the for me to carry out this research, and the research objectives. There are two main research objectives. The first one is to evaluate factors influencing students' digital technology acceptance in in Islamic higher educations in Brunei using a modified technology acceptance model. The modification was done by integrating two external factors. The first one is perceived Islamic education compatibility, and the second factor is digital self-efficacy. And the second objective was to analyze and compare the digital competence levels of students in Brunei Darussalam using the European Digital Competence Framework. And the comparison is between students from Islamic universities versus general education universities. So the research questions, there are four questions in my research. The first one is, which term factors significantly influence digital technology adoption in Islamic education? And the second one is, what is the influence of perceived Islamic education compatibility and digital self-efficacy on digital technology adoption in Islamic higher education? The third question is, is the digital competence framework reliable and valid in measuring the digital competence of students in Brunei higher education context? And the fourth one is, are there significant differences in the digital competence levels between students from Islamic universities and from general universities in Brunei? So to answer, I mean, these questions, they directed or they guided me to conduct this research. And why conduct this research? There is a significance in this research. Why? Because understanding digital technology acceptance in Islamic education ensures the it ensures the relevance and effectiveness of educational practices. And this can help to enhance learning outcomes among students and also prepare learners for the digital economy. And specifically by incorporating the PIC variable, which reflects the alignment of digital technology with Islamic educational values and needs, also incorporating digital self-efficacy variable, the modified model aims to provide a more nuanced understanding of acceptance factors in Islamic higher education institutions. Moreover, based on the second research objective, digital competence comparison is very important so that to identify potential differences influenced by the educational context. So in understanding these variations, it can lead us or it can inform stakeholders to tailor educational interventions and policy recommendations for both educational systems. And in the literature review, to achieve my first research objective, I found that uh, the framework which fits well with my research objective is the technology acceptance model. So in this research, there are two theoretical frameworks. The first one is technology acceptance model to achieve the first research objective. TAM is a theory used in information system research to model how people accept technologies in a particular context. The TAM model basically focuses on perceived ease of use and perceived usefulness of digital technologies. There is the evidence from the meta-systematic literature reviews on about TAM, which they confirm that technology acceptance model is the robust model for understanding ICT adoption in different contexts. However, there are no studies which explored the application of TAM in Islamic education context, especially in Brunei Darussalam. So the TAM literature lacks, moreover, the TAM literature lacks a religious-based contextual factor to explain digital technology acceptance in Islamic education. So basically, as we can see in this figure, the term consists of two main variables. I mean, the independent variables, which are perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use, which are theorized to affect or to impact the behavior intentions of individuals in using technologies. So as I said, the literature of term lacks contextual factors to explain digital technology acceptance in Islamic education, and various studies, they insist that there is a need to understand how religious and cultural factors influence the acceptance of digital technologies in these institutions. So in this study, what I've done is to develop a specialized model, which I extended the technology acceptance model by incorporating the perceived compatibility concept from the innovation diffusion theory. Also, I integrated another factor from the theory of social cognitive theory, which is digital self-efficacy. So the TAMISE model, which I've developed, or I extended from TAM, and I combined another element from social cognitive theory and another theory, which is innovation diffusion theory. Perceived compatibility concept, this refers to the degree to which an innovation is perceived as consistent with existing values, practices, and needs. This is according to Rogers. And this variable or this concept is very crucial in the Islamic education context. So in my model, this I call it TAMISE, which is Technology Acceptance Model in Islamic Education. What I've done here is to extend from the TAM model, I've added perceived Islamic education compatibility factor and the digital technology self-efficacy, which I theorize they will have also influence on perceived behavior intention and the use behavior. So the arrows among these variables indicates the hypothesis of my study based on the first research objective. So for instance, hypothesis one, I postulate that perceived Islamic education compatibility variable will have a significant effect on perceived usefulness. And also the second hypothesis, I hypothesize that perceived Islamic education compatibility will have significant effect on behavior intention. And so the other arrows indicates other hypotheses of the studies. So in the literature, there are multiple studies which also implemented the term theory. And there are similarities and differences in their findings. For instance, there are some studies they found that some factors they significantly affect other factors, but other studies did not find the significance of other factors influencing other factors. So, for instance, in Malaysia, the study did not find a significant effect of perceived usefulness on behavior intention, which is contrary to other studies like the study in Turkey, which found the opposite of it. So, similar to my studies, I also theorize the effects of perceived ease of use and perceived usefulness on behavior intentions and so on. However, what is missing in the literature is the contextualized factor which can fit the context of Islamic education. Even though some studies they use the concept of compatibility in extending the term, however, this compatibility it was used in the general sense. But in my study, this compatibility concept is contextualized to reflect well the Islamic education values and or specifically Islamic pedagogical values and needs. So this is what is missing in the literature. And the second theoretical framework I've used to achieve the second objective is the digital competence framework, version 2.1. So this digital competence framework originally was developed in the European context or in the Europe, and this is a very comprehensive framework, well developed, which explains digital competence of individuals in different contexts. Studies have found that this framework is relevant to educational settings and has proved to be appropriate for assessing digital competence of learners. Multiple studies, they found the framework to be reliable and valid in evaluating students' digital competence. However, in Brunei, ironically, there are no studies which evaluated and compared digital competence between individuals in general higher education institutions and the Islamic education, specifically using this framework, the digital competence framework. So this is the motivation for me to fill this gap, which is found in the literature. And there are multiple studies which also use the digital competence framework, and they found some findings are very similar, but there are some findings contradictory. So, for instance, there is a pattern here in these previous studies. For instance, most of the studies they found that individuals and especially students in higher education or other education level, they possess moderate digital competence levels. Most of them moderate. Most of the studies they found moderate digital competence levels, and which is contrary to what people can assume, that people are competent or they are digital natives, they can use very well digital technology, but the evidence from the literature, it indicates otherwise. So this is a pattern in the literature. Another pattern is that some studies have attempted to compare the digital competence among individuals from different study disciplines. For instance, one study in Germany by Hewling, it found that after comparing the digital competence level between students from education discipline and the students from engineering discipline, when they compared the digital competence, they found no significant differences among them. However, other studies, they compared, for instance, the study in Saudi Arabia. After finding the moderate level of digital competence, they also compared the digital confidence, digital competence based on the different faculties or different study disciplines. For them, they found significant differences among these two groups or different groups. So the pattern from the literature of digital competence is that some studies, they found significant differences between two different groups of students, like from different field of studies, and other studies they didn't find. So, but the literature, there is something missing in the literature, specifically the comparison between religious education institutions, students from religious institutions, and the secular institution or general education institution. So this is where my study fills the gap. My study will compare specifically between students from Islamic universities and from general education universities. To attain or to achieve my research objectives, I use in the methodology, or I followed the quantitative approach, which I followed the post-positivism paradigm, in which this paradigm, it allows me to test hypotheses, and because I already have the priori theories, so I need to test them. And I developed the theory, like I developed the model, which I extended from the term. So this post-positivism it fits well with my research objectives. So more important, besides that, the current research use the cross-section study design to achieve the research objectives. And the population of the study is students from 4 public universities in Brunei. And the sample was students from 2 Islamic universities and 2 general education universities. So after collecting data, I got 439 students from both institutions. And the instruments I used for data collection is survey questionnaires based on Tamise model or the extended term, and also from the digital comp framework. For the Tamise model, the items were modified from the previous studies, and also for the digital competence framework, the items were borrowed from other studies. However, besides that, I conducted a pilot study to validate these instruments, and the results of my pilot studies I've already published. So during the pilot studies, the results are that the Tamisa instrument was highly reliable, which, as you can see here, the Crowbunch alpha score was more than 0.7, which is exactly was 0.949. And for the digital competence instruments, the alpha was 0.959. So both instruments were highly reliable to be used for my main study. And for the analysis part, I used different analysis, including descriptive, t-test, and confirmatory factor analysis. And also for testing the hypothesis for the first research objective or technology acceptance, I use partially square structure equation modeling to test the hypothesis. So both JASP and Adanko softwares were used for this analysis. So the results of my study is that from the Tamise or my modified term model, the same results indicates that to answer the research question 1 and 2, the Tamise results, first after making sure that the Tamise model was valid and reliable based on different metrics, then I continued with the circle equation modeling analysis. From the same analysis, I found that besides term core variables, which are perceived ease of use and perceived usefulness, also perceived Islamic education compatibility variable and digital self-efficacy, they both significantly affect students' behavior intention to adopt digital technologies in Islamic universities. So among the 10 hypotheses from the Tamisa model, 8 were supported and the 2 were not supported. However, for the 2 hypotheses which are not supported, I also tested the indirect or the mediation effect of these variables. And what I found is that even though perceived Islamic education compatibility and the digital self-efficacy, they did not directly affect behavior, actual use behavior of technologies, they indirectly affected, like indirect means they were mediated, their effects were fully mediated through the behavior intention variable. As we can see the results in this table. And beside that, the Tamisa model was able to explain the variance of behavior intention, the 64% of behavior intention, and also it explained around 44% of youth behavior among Islamic university students. Moreover, in the digital competence framework results, the framework was found valid. I found the framework valid and reliable based on different metrics. So for instance, using the different fit indices, I found that the framework, the data collected, it fits well with the structure of the model, of the digital comp model. Moreover, for the reliability, composite reliability and alpha were used to assure that the model was reliable, and both metrics were in metrics, their scores were in acceptable intervals. Moreover, for the validity, I found that the digital competence framework is valid through the metrics of HTMT, which is heterotrait monotrait ratio. And this metric, it ensures that the variables within the model, which in this framework, there are 5 areas or 5 constructs. So based on the results of HTMT, I, uh, we can conclude that the structure of the digital component it indicates that these variables are distinct from one another or are different from one another. So in general, all these results of the reliability and validity, it indicates that the digital competence framework is highly reliable and valid in both general universities and the Islamic education universities in Brunei Darussalam. For the part of the comparison, which is the research question 4 was about, are there digital competence differences among students from Islamic education and general education universities? So the results from the t-test indicates that, as we can see in this table 25, there are 3 among the 5 areas of digital competence framework. Only 3 areas which are information data literacy, communication collaboration, and the digital safety. These areas, there were significant differences between these 2 groups. However, in 2 areas, digital competence, there were no differences. After we know what the implication of this moving this
What's wrong? I cannot hear you.
Yeah, me too. I
Maybe.
think connection.
Oh, he has
Yeah,
been.
I thought it's my connection. I think he got kicked.
Yeah.
yeah. We still have like a 5 minutes more.
But I think if we cannot finish in 5 minutes, too
Yeah,
long.
I think for the introduction, it's too long.
No, even the literature review, too long.
Yeah.
For me, I have like 28 slides, and I just speak in 30 minutes. Oh, he called me now.
Okay.
Hello. What's wrong with the internet? You got kicked out. We are still here. Ah,
in the findings of my research, there are some implications. First, before moving forward, my findings are also similar to other studies, previous studies. For instance, the hypothesis 1 and 2, 3, 4, all the supported hypotheses or the results are similar to other studies. Like, for instance, PIC affected perceived usefulness. Also, Sahin and the colleagues, they found this similar findings, and so on. But what are the implications of these findings? So the implications here is that because I found that perceived Islamic education compatibility affects significantly both perceived usefulness and behavior intention. So this implies that as far as students in Islamic education institutions perceive that particular digital technologies are compatible with their existing pedagogical and religious values and needs, they are more likely to find it beneficial or useful, which also will influence their desires or intentions to engage with these tools. Also, the implication from the digital self-efficacy is that there is a need to tailor programs to develop or enhance students' digital self-efficacy or self-efficacy in using digital tools. And also, the implication is to design user-friendly and compatible digital technology tools within these institutions. And from the digital findings, the findings is that we found that the digital competence framework is very reliable in Brunei Darul Islam, which is similar to the findings of other studies. For example, Al Nasib and Hewlin, they've also found the same results. And in my findings, we found that students have moderate digital competence levels in all 5 areas. And this is similar to other studies which were deployed in different countries. For instance, in Saudi Arabia, in Morocco, Spain, Turkey, they've also found that students have moderate digital competence levels. This indicates that there is a need for intervention and the enhancement of digital competence in both Islamic and general higher education institutions. So also, I found that students from general education scored higher, significantly higher in 3 areas: information data literacy, safety, and the content creation, and communication and collaboration, than students from Islamic universities. This means that there is a lack of equal opportunities in the training of digital competence, and also differences in curriculum between these two institutions. Also, there was no significant differences in digital problem solving and digital content creation, which indicates that students in both contexts equally struggle in these digital competence dimensions. So the implications here is that because of the contextual factor, perceived Islamic educational compatibility, there is a need to offer training programs to empower digital self-efficacy. And this is from the findings of digital self-efficacy. It means we need training programs so that we can enable or we can empower self-efficacy of students. And also, we need to ensure that the user-friendliness and the compatibility of digital tools within Islamic education institutions so that to meet the institution educational goals and needs. The digital competence is applicable and valid in Brunei Darussalam based on the findings, both in Islamic and general education universities. So digital competence framework can be extended to other cultural and educational settings. The difference, it implies that based on the findings of digital competence differences, it implies that different pedagogical and approaches and institution culture influence digital competence and skills acquisition. So it means digital competence of students need further improvements and interventions. Also, there is a need for curriculum development or curriculum reform within Islamic higher education institutions. Also, there is a need for government and industry engagement with higher education institutions in developing and executing comprehensive digital literacy programs. Finally, the study has its limits. For one of the limits, this study is cross-section, and also self-report survey was used. And also we focus on general technologies. It involved only student sample. Also, we excluded other factors. So future studies, they should think about longitudinal design and also include other countries. Also, they should incorporate qualitative insights and the performance-based assessments rather than self-report survey. Also, we can focus with specific technologies like ChatGPT, and the perspective from educators is also important, and also to integrate other factors such as facilitating conditions and social influence. So this study, what I did is to develop and validate the novel model, which is called TAMISE, to evaluate digital technology acceptance in Islamic universities in Brunei. So alongside terms constructs, I found also PIC and the digital self-efficacy variables are also critical in technology acceptance theories, especially when cultural and religious contexts are in play. So theoretically, my study contributed to the term literature by extending the model and also the knowledge gap contribution, because previously we didn't know which factors affect digital technology adoption in Brunei, especially in Islamic higher education institutions. So the contribution practically is that stakeholders can tailor strategies for technology adoption within these institutions, and also stakeholders can improve the integration of digital technologies by understanding and leveraging these factors. Also, the study validated digital competence framework, and they also evaluated the digital competence levels of students in Brunei. So, which the contribution here is that the digital competence, I've filled the gap of theoretical gap of digital competence theory, in which I implemented the framework in another culture. And also institution comparison is also another contribution. So there is a need to develop strategies to close digital competence gaps, because we found that students from general education, they perform better in some areas of digital competence. So there is a need to develop strategies to close these digital competence gaps. And also, example, we need adaptive curriculum within Islamic higher education institutions. Also, we need professional development for educators and students. This is a practical implication of my findings. And finally, there is a call for collaboration between Islamic and general higher education in technology-related initiatives based on my findings. And thank you very much for listening and attending my presentation. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Musa. I think for the time, I'll already track. You have I think it's okay because it's 33 minutes overall, and you have literature. You talk about literature and theory. It's about 15 minutes, and then methodology for 3 minutes, and then for the result, it's the rest. I think that's good. Just make it a little short in the literature, I think, because it's exit like a 3 more minutes, right?
Yeah.
So, but overall for the timing, I think it's good.
Yes, good. Yeah. How about Trang? What did you observe?
It's quite different from mine, of course.
Yeah.
And yeah, same. I think that for the literature review, you
It's a
use too
long,
much, too
very too
long.
much. Yeah.
Maybe you should cut down to choose the typical one. But you need two framework, right? You have two
Yeah.
frameworks, so you have to talk about this, yes. But
Yeah.
like I think that you can talk about like digital competencies, talk about its definition, and then like that. So or maybe some variables, but try to sort down, like cut down a little
Yeah.
bit.
The literature.
Otherwise, you talk like, oh, I have to be fast, right?
Yeah.
So you cannot like emphasize or focus on the things that you want. Maybe you should spend more time on the results and discussion.
That's a good
So
point.
you should cut down the literature and focus
Yeah.
more on the results and methodology and something like that.
Okay.
No graphic, just table.
No
No graphic. You don't
graphics.
draw anything. Just present in the type table.
Yeah.
So
The literature.
even everything, the results and everything.
No.
Maybe because your is quantity, right? So,
Mm.
or why don't you present in a kind of chart or graph? No, cannot.
I can, but man, as you see, so less than 1 week, like 3 days, I was like prompted, like, and as
Yeah.
you saw yesterday, I was still
Mm.
preparing my PPT, so I
Yeah.
wanted to stick with the basics first.
And one more thing is that you can like use like parallel thing, because sometimes I see in the slides for some sentence you write the full sentences, but you also write something like now phrase. So make sure they are parallel, so it will be easier to follow.
Like again, pardon?
Show the slide again. Show me the
Okay.
slide. I show you. I tell you.
Okay.
For example, show me the problem and gaps. The slide about problems and gaps. Yeah. For example. Okay. 1 second. Oh, how can I draw? No. Okay. For example, student do not take, so this is a full sentence, right? Yeah, but here you say challenges. Is this the equal? Are they equal? Challenges are prepared to interact. This one is not a sentence. I mean, that if you write all the sentences, so it should be all the sentences. But if people use a noun phrase here, so this one should be the noun phrase.
So you mean like I need to write the complete sentence or what?
I mean, if you use all the noun phrase, so you everything here should be noun phrase. If you use this one like a full sentence with subject, verb, something like that, so this one should be equal, similar. Because my supervisor will look at this. And yeah, and there's you need to, I don't like the kind of table. You have to use a graphic or something like that. So I have to revise and make my presentation like full of graphics.
Oh, wow. So even in the research problem, you have graphics?
No, research problem, no. I mean that like for the results and limitation or something like that, I just revise.
Okay.
But no worry, I think that is fine.
Yeah, for me, it's just at least I needed one week, like to really put in the PPT in a very good.
But the supervisor did send you last week, like get prepared, right?
Yeah, but there is a difference between when you are like they really tell you for example, for you, you are going to present, you are presenting to your supervisor. That is practical. But just to tell me, prepare your PPT and that's all. You know, students, we are students, you know. Like, you don't take it serious if there is no consequences. Anyway, I don't give excuse. This is what happened. But anyway, what are the questions? Yeah?
You're lucky you have a good supervisor, very good supervisor.
Yeah.
Because for us, we need to do it
By
Wait,
ourselves.
by
wait.
ourselves
Let
only.
me